Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to build your heat map strategy now. I'm Danny Bouchard, founder and CEO of CartoVista, and yes, I'm the guy who gets way too excited about maps, megawatts, and making data easier to understand. Today, we're going to break down how to plan and execute your heat map project successfully. And thank God I'm not doing this alone. I'm joined by a few of the brilliant minds behind our platform. So Laura, Harry, and Winnock. Hey team, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Doing great.
How are you?
Thanks.
Doing great. All right, so before we jump into the good stuff, why don't each of you take a moment to introduce yourself and share a bit what you're doing at CartoVista?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danny. I'll kick things off. My name is Laura Spence. I am the Director of Sales here at CartoVista, and I'm very excited to be here. We've been working pretty hard in the last 2 years, especially to get underneath FERC Order 2023 and helping electric utilities be able to manage some of the challenges that are coming up with this. And we've been able to bring all of this in together to come up with some good strategic ideas for you, things that you can implement right away, agnostic of any tools or anything you'd like to do. So I'm happy to be here, and take it away, Harry.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Harry Barcia. I'm a JS specialist. I work with geographic components of all sorts of data, including transmission lines and substations, and excited to showcase you the work we've been doing.
And hello, everyone. My name is Winnock Monsengo. I'm a geospatial specialist here at CartoVista. I'm very delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to a great webinar, and I hope we bring value and insightful facts to you. Over to you, Danny.
Beautiful. And to get us all on the same page, let's start with a quick overview of what CartoVista is and how we help utilities like yours turn complex grid data into visual insights, hopefully without the headaches. So a powerful cloud platform turns complex data into clear, interactive maps that don't just look good, they make sense. It's not just about visualization. It's about turning your data into meaningful, actionable stories that reveal insights, spark engagement, and support smart decision across the organization. Over the years, we had the privilege of working with some of the most forward-thinking utilities and grid operators, including MISO, Southern Company, ISO New England, and PNM, helping them bring clarity and speed to their transmission planning. To showcase this work, we recently launched a dedicated hub just for utilities, ISOs, and RTOs. You can explore it at electricutilities.cartovista.com. Now I'll hand it over to Laura, who will give us an overview of what we will be covering today.
Thanks, Danny. So just a couple of housekeeping things. We're on the books here for about an hour. We're probably going to come under that just a little bit, but the goal here is to give you guys actionable things that you can implement if you're considering FERC Order 2023. So we'll kick things off with the recap of what the order is. We'll talk about the strategic choice, build or buy. There's lots of questions around that for sure. We'll talk about how to assemble a team internally, regardless of which way you go. We'll also take a look at the best practices for implementation. There will be takeaways and Q&A. And I'd like to say that this is absolutely an interactive webinar, so please feel free to get to know the chat box down below. We also would love to have your questions dropped in the Q&A section as well. So we're going to keep things really interactive. If there's anything that you see that resonates or that makes sense to you or that you like, give a thumbs up as well. That will help keep things interactive. So let's jump into it. We'll start with the recap of FERC Order 2023, which is the reason that we are all here, of course. So we know that this federal executive order, FERC Order 2023, aims to ultimately improve transparency and efficiency in the interconnection process. So it does require some of the ISOs and RTOs to host a public-facing heat map, and those specific heat maps need to be able to be accessible without a login and available 30 days after each cluster study and restudy. And the goal is ultimately to cut down on wait times by showing where projects actually make sense. So we're going to get into what is a heat map and why it matters. It's ultimately just a visual tool that uses color to represent geographic data, and this makes complex patterns easy to spot at a glance. And in the context of transmission planning, heat maps are mandatory to display available interconnection capacity in megawatts across the grid. They help identify where the grid has room for new generation projects, and just as importantly, where it doesn't. And it highlights those zones of high and low capacity both. And when done right, it makes planning faster and smarter for your team and the public. So Winnock is going to get into some of the more nitty-gritty technical details. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Now we'll do a little bit of myth busting here. Some people think of the FERC 2023 heat map as a simple map with some color gradients. That is a misconception that we will rule out, especially since what you are building is a high interactive and highly performing decision support tool. So for you to come up with a good heat map, we've come up with 5 main ingredients that are interlocked that you have to pay attention to. And the first one is the need to have an interface that is modern for your user. So always take user consideration first. And users should be able to interrogate your data, perform their own analysis. For example, when someone enter a megawatt injection into your heat map, they expect the result to update, and the heat map will change its color, but also the data below that accompanies that map will update itself. And that is linked to the second point, which is speed. Speed matters a lot, as you have seen in the video, and it matters not just for the users on your public-facing heat map, but for yourself internally as well. So as a whole, you need a system that is responding and that is rendering the data very swiftly. The third thing that you have to pay attention to is the performance, which is slightly different from the speed, in that we're not visualizing small files here. When we talk about heat map, sometimes we have cluster studies that can go to the 20 to 30 million records for each. So you need a very performing tool that is able to handle that. It needs to render things without freezing, and that usually goes beyond the scope of most traditional geographic information systems. The fourth ingredient you have to put in is security, and these are some of the non-negotiable ones, and they are part of your enterprise environmental factors. And you have, for instance, the critical energy infrastructure information compliance, which specifies that you shouldn't expose your line level data or your raw constraints value, even if they can be accessible online. Beyond those, you also have some basic rules like login and user management, but we will see a bit more about that later. The final piece that you have to put together to have a proper heat map as intended for FERC Order 2023 is, of course, the integrity. Your user, whether they are internal or the public one, need to trust what they are looking at through your portal. And that means having clear workflows for data update, for versioning, for validation all along. Again, these are things we will discuss in greater detail moving down the line. But Laura already mentioned that you have a 30-day period to put your study or restudy available to the public. And so you need some proper workflows and calendar to make that happening. And on the next slide, Laura will take you through what actually you need to do and what your options are so as to come up with a FERC Order 2023. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much. So we set the groundwork here for the scope of FERC Order 2023 and what it requires. And one of the questions we often get is, should we build or should we get something off the shelf? So I would love to have you in the chat drop build if you are planning or considering to build. If you're considering possibly buying, drop buy. And in the chat, just type DK if you're not quite sure yet. That way, we're making sure that you're paying attention. We're going to dive deeper into the topic. We're looking forward to hearing your answers. Okay, so if you are in the build category, and it looks like there's one, maybe, possibly, we'll see. But if you are considering an in-house option or approach to meet compliance, there are three big pieces to talk about. So we have to look at the back end, we have to look at rendering, and we have to look at the front end. So as Winnock had mentioned, this isn't just building a map for the public, there are things to consider. So we'll take a look first at the back end, where you can see the green writing here on the left. This includes handling roles, permissions, secure access, and connecting to your existing power flow analysis tools or software. It also means cleaning large data sets across multiple years, multiple scenarios, and situations like that. Next, we'll take a look at the rendering engine in purple. And that's the part that actually creates the heat map. So the styling, the interpolation, which was the example that we looked at earlier of the heat map, tile generation, and performance, all that comes into play here. The next is the front end, and this is what the public sees. So you'll need something that is clear, easy to use design, something intuitive, search tools that make sense and don't make the user work too hard, legal disclaimers, and branding that meets communications and legal requirements for your company. Then fourth, at the bottom here, you can see that we'll get into the process. It begins with development and it ends in knowledge transfer and training. And we will get deeper into that in detail. It's good to mention as well that in our experience, well-resourced teams take more than 9 months to deliver something stable and user-friendly if they're building in-house. So if you're early in the process and your mandate is not for, a year or 2 years out, that might be acceptable for you. And if it isn't and you need something more near term, that might be something to consider as well. So next we'll talk about the 4 essentials for success that we have seen in working with teams. So this again is agnostic. It's not tool related at all, but there are 4 steps that really make a difference for teams to have things that come out on time and on budget to meet compliance to meet FERC Order 2023. So the first thing is the JAD sessions. We aptly named those Joint Application Development Sessions, which essentially are just early stage planning meetings that include parts of your team like your transmission planning team, the IT, GIS, comms, and even legal. And the goal is to really put everything on the table early to avoid scope creep or issues down the road. And Danny's going to get into this in the team collaboration section in more detail. Next is defining your specs. So making sure that we're writing down and mapping behaviors, user interactions, required data fields, and security rules. Ultimately, we know that we can't build what we can't describe, and also it keeps everybody accountable on the team. The third is to validate everything early. So your POI data, your transfer studies, and everything before development, because the last thing that you want to find out is that there is a missing bus ID or mismatched coordinates. So validating early is key. And finally, to choose open formats like CSV, shapefiles, and GeoJSON just makes things a lot more flexible and future-proof, so that if you change your mind or if things happen, you can ultimately kind of make the most out of everything. So we're going to switch gears here and we're going to talk about team collaboration and get a little bit more in the weeds about these JAD sessions. So as we had mentioned, the joint application development sessions is where we recommend beginning, and Danny is going to take this over in more detail.
Beautiful. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the key players involved, of course, in a heat map project, talking about collaboration. No surprise, the project manager in the center is leading the effort, keeping everything on track and making sure it aligns with the utilities goal. They're the main point of contact between internal teams and potentially vendors if you are working with them. The transmission planning team on the left provides the POI and the transfer study data, and we'll look at that in a moment, making sure that the solution meets all the engineering requirements. Transmission business users help test the application through the user acceptance testing. They give feedback and confirm that the tool does what it needs to do. The IT team on its side supports the integration and security. For on-prem deployments, they handle the infrastructure setup. In cloud scenarios, they focus on making sure the platform meets the internal security standards, including things like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and overall security. The communication team makes sure that the heat map follows the utilities brands and looks polished for public release. The GIS team role is to provide the mapping data and ensure everything connects properly. Finally, vendors on the right can offer off-the-shelf solution and support to speed things up and reduce development time. Now let's talk about joint application developments or JAD sessions. They are focused, hands-on workshop that bring all the key stakeholders together, planning, IT, GIS, to align early and set the project up for success. Unlike regular meetings, JAD sessions are where real progress happens. We review requirements, explore options in an open manner, define exactly what needs to be built. The goal is simple. Get clear on scope and UX, avoid delays and back and forth, and walk away with a sign-off and a shared plan. The results, you've got fewer surprises, better accountability, and a much faster execution. JAD sessions are fast-paced, 60 minutes working meeting led by the project manager, bringing everyone to the table to move the project forward. You should begin with the first JAD session focused on discovery and planning. This is where you review the business and technical needs, covering data and IT requirements, your utilities branding, the overall look and feel, and any legal notice that needs to be displayed. In the second JAD session, your team should aim at creating interactive prototypes to bring the user experience to life. This is the moment to validate the design with everyone, explore different concepts with stakeholders. Throughout the process, you should gather feedback and make adjustments along the way. So it's not uncommon to have one JAD session, go back, have another one. Of course, there could be a number of these. Once everything is agreed upon, you should finalize both the UX and technical spec, confirm all the project requirements, and secure the formal sign-off to move into development. This structured approach will help you reduce risk, stay on track, and deliver a compliant, user-friendly solution from day one. All right, now that we looked at how your team can be aligned, it's time to shift into the how. In this section, we will walk you through best practices for building your own heat map, from data to UX to deployment. To generate a heat map, we need two core data sources working together. First is a list of proposed POI, or point of interconnection. For each POI, we need the bus number, the name, the KV level, and its coordinates, latitude and longitude. The bus number, of course, is the key that links everything together. The second key input is the transfer study analysis data, typically exported from tools like PowerGem, PowerWorld, or PSSE. This is where the real system intelligence comes from. It includes the year, the scenario, the constraint from two buses, the name of the constraint, the contingency applied, and the number of critical measures like FCITC, DFACS, and loading in percentage. These files can grow quickly with multiple years and scenarios. It's not unusual to be working with millions of records, as we mentioned. So having a smart strategy to deal with it is important. Now let's talk about tips on how we can build trust with the end user when it comes to presenting this key data. As discussed earlier from the team collaboration, integrating your corporate branding into your heat map can really make a difference, not just visually, but in terms of trust and clarity of communication. You should align its look and feel with your utilities brand. That includes using your logo, consistent colors, and UI element that reflect your organization's design standards. This helps internal and external users immediately recognize the app as part of your ecosystem. You will also likely need to include legal disclaimers, as we discussed. Those are important for setting expectations and limiting liability. Last but not least, a quick word of caution when it comes to GIS. Most traditional mapping platforms and many PowerFlow software are built for technical users, not the general public. So when designing your heat map, you should focus on creating a simple, intuitive user experience that delivers value without overwhelming the user. One important but often overlooked element also is the base map. It may seem minor, but your choice of base map has a major impact on how users interpret the data. You should select or customize a base map that is clean, readable, and free from unnecessary details. The right base map improves clarity, reinforces your branding, and helps users stay focused on what matters the most, the capacity data. Harry will now talk about how we can communicate capacity with efficiency. Over to you, Harry.
Thank you, Danny. So when building your heat map, the way you visualize data really matters, especially for substations with multiple kV levels. About 1 in 4 US substations have more than 1 kV level, which often causes overlapping data. When you compare the same area, if you use points, it gets messy fast. Points stack on top of each other, making it hard to see capacity clearly. A better option is a raster view like you see on the right. It's much clearer, shows megawatt availability with beautiful color gradients. It also helps protect sensitive infrastructure data. Bottom line, raster heat maps are easier to read, easier to share, and in the end, better for compliance. So when showing capacity, clarity is key, especially for users who aren't technical. That's where a color gradient comes in. It's easy to understand. Red or orange means limited or no capacity, and blue or green means more capacity available. This makes it easy to scan the map, spot where there is room to interconnect and where there isn't. So on the left, rollovers show exact megawatt values without cluttering the map. On the right, users can filter by kV level or switch between current and projected capacity, helping them see limits and options clearly. Bottom line, the clearer your heat map, the more useful it is for engineers, planners, but also the public. So on this slide, this last tip is about showing the impact of a megawatt injection in a way that's easy to understand. The heat map should let users toggle between before and after the injection. That way it's clear where new bottlenecks or overloads appear. For example, here I pick a substation, a point of interconnection, inject 200 megawatts, and right away you can see what changes. Blue means everything's fine, and red shows where the grid is now overloaded. There is no more capacity. These visuals make it quick to spot problems. No need to dig through data tables. Now, over to you, Laura, for more tips.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Harry. So the next practice is really about enhancing user navigation. And one of the keys is to help users be able to quickly locate areas of interest. So in this example, you'll be able to search by county, which is especially useful when we're working on region-specific projects. In this example, I also perform a city name search. In this case, we're using Locust Grove, where you'll see a drop-down of relevant results appear automatically. Additionally, you can also search by postal code, full address, or even a latitude, longitude for precise targeting. There's another option as well to use place names or POI attributes to find a specific interconnection point or substation. And to maximize usability, the search bar should always be easy to find and intuitive to use. So it's ideally placed at the top of the interface or top left so that people can find it. This feature makes the map far more accessible and allow people to be able to find things when they have to go quickly. The next step is about guiding users through everything. So one good thing to keep in mind is that this is a public-facing tool. And so in this example, you can see the video is running. Heat maps are, of course, public-facing, and we can't assume that people know how to use these maps. And that's why it's extremely important to use a clear call to action that starts the guided tour. And this gives user a simple step-by-step overview of how to use the map. And the tour should walk through a few key things. It should walk through things like the legal disclaimer. I think Danny had mentioned this earlier, how to move around the map, how to toggle layers, how to run a search, and how to simulate a megawatt injection. And adding these step-by-step instructions right inside of the interface makes the users feel a lot more confident and in control. And one of the big benefits is that it lowers the learning curve and helps them get more value out of the tool. So next, we're going to pass it over to Winnock.
Thank you very much, Laura. That's a good number of hints we are sharing coming from our toolbox of best practices. So I hope our esteemed audience find value in that. We've got about 3 more slides to go. So additionally, another recommendation is to make integration and automation easy for your application. They are essential for scaling your heat map effectively and avoiding putting the system in a silo, which can be detrimental to you, of course. You want an application that is compatible with the systems that you have most likely already invested in. We're talking about your engineering platform, and Danny already mentioned a few of those. And as we've said, one simple way to come up with that integration is to use open or widely adopted data formats, such as comma-separated values or Excel. This way, you can import data from your other systems, but you can also export your data and use them elsewhere if you need that. And this is a good way to future-proof your system, since the standards and the formats always evolve. Another approach to use is to have the integration of APIs into the system you will come up with. For instance, you have REST, which is a very popular API, and it allows you basically to have your computer's applications talk to each other, which will improve the reliability, and it will eliminate repetitive and manual tasks into your workflow. And if you combine that notion with scripting notions like Python, then you will enable a more powerful applications that will be able to grow and that you will literally tweak beyond the initial offering of your solution. And by experience, I can tell you that if you apply those 2 recommendations, you will save your client time. You will reduce the error, of course, on your processes, and you will shift your team's focus from managing day-to-day files towards a more insight delivery and decision-making approach or results. Now, when it comes to deployment, you have 3 main options. You have a cloud, on-premises, as we have said, and you have a hybrid solution, which is a combination of both. Each organization has its specifics, and there is no preferred options, and the choice depends essentially on your enterprise environmental factor, and especially your information technology situation, and I mean infrastructure and the policy or internal regulation. The cloud hosting approach, though, offers several advantages. That's at least what we have noticed. It gets you the system up and running faster. You get updates and patches and the bug fixes quicker as well. It offers you also low maintenance cost, and it virtually guarantees that your system will scale, and that will reduce stress on your team and your resources. If you have stringent IT policies, and if you have an existing infrastructure investment you want to capitalize on, then you probably want to go for an on-premises or a hybrid solution. It's typically expensive, at least that's what we have noticed, but you will have greater control over your infrastructure, your data, access policies, compliance, and the like. But in any of those cases, we recommend that you opt for solutions that adopt very modern industry standards like single sign-on and multi-factor authentication and so on. And Your application should also be built onto modern container-ready platform stacks, like those you can see on the bottom of the slides here. If you do these recommendations, the promise that your team will be happy because it will be easier to manage your system and to make it evolve. You will also not be overwhelmed by data growing rapidly and having some processing power surge in terms of needs. And the last one is in case technology shift in the direction, you won't suffer from technological FOMO. Last but not least, this is actually where the rubber meets the road and you want to get things right. Keep your implementation on track to avoid surprises later down in the process. And if you do proper project management and if you apply the principles, this should be guaranteed. But here we have shared a notional schedule based on our experience that you can, of course, adapt to your OPAs, your organizational process assets, and your own internal guidance. But the bottom line here is that you can be up and running in less than 4 months. So 3.5 months, as you'll see in an example. In order to achieve that, though, you need to make sure that no stakeholder is taken by surprise. And that's exactly what the JAT session does. So Danny has talked in great detail about JAT sessions. You can call it different in your organization. So I will not go in too much detail about that anymore. Additionally, the data is also an important factor. You need to validate your data. You need to do some cleanup, especially when it comes to the GIS data. And this will help you basically expedite the rollout process. If you're interested in data quality considerations, during our last webinar, we discussed that for some slides. So I invite you to revisit that. It could be, you could learn a thing or two. The validation step needs not to be overlooked because it can set you back for several weeks if it's not done right. Now, stick around with me towards the end. I have a story to tell you about this. But once you have those first steps in place, meaning your data and the specs, now you can bring the project to life by doing what we call the app configuration, which is just rolling out the platform for you and to translate those scope into actually a tangible system that you can use. And that's where we need to involve your IT team, especially, but also all the stakeholders, as Danny said. In parallel, you should begin developing your documentation, which is essential because it helps your team easily embrace the system. And again, it's a way for you to reduce stress as you move down toward the implementation, even after the delivery, so the post-delivery. And again, you need the IT to be really involved in those steps, especially when it comes to security requirement. Then it comes the interesting portion, which is quality assurance. Ideally, you do quality control throughout your project, monitoring, of course, and control. But here, what we want to do is make sure that the system that we have configured perform nominally. And it is followed closely by a user acceptance testing where the actual user of the system will go on and try it and try to basically break it. And that's where comes the story I told you. We worked with one client that during the user acceptance realized that the data wasn't properly validated and it was producing an unacceptable result. And that took us actually a couple of months just as to go back and forth and try to fix so that the public could have a reliable material to interrogate and work with. And you want to avoid that. Additionally, at CartoVista, we've delivered this approach using this execution timeline several times. And the last one was with our client PNM, which was up and running in 3.5 months. And that is the power of using clear communication, strong coordination and execution that adopts an agile approach, not just a water flow as you can see here, but being able to adjust. Now on the next slide, now that we have shared with you all the best practices, I will pass it on to Danny, who will tell you about how to further future-proof your system you're adopting, and you move a little bit beyond just compliant. Over to you, Danny.
Thank you, Winnock. That was great. So CartoVista, first of all, what I want to say is we feature an advanced POI analysis module and tools that is plug and play and allows you to perform analysis at the transmission line level. Of course, that's beyond FERC Order, but we believe this is valuable. So in the following example cluster study data from PNM, we have 8 high renewables and peak scenarios to choose from. You can see the capacity changing a lot from one scenario to the others. The colors on the map shows which area are more constrained. You notice that we are displaying the transmission lines in white on the map. Each bus from 2 segment includes a contingency loading maximum in percentage. When I'm using the filters by KV level, it filters the POI points and heat map, but also filters the transmission line. Now let's look at the saved megawatt injection on the left, shown here in blue. When selected, an animation highlights the associated from 2 constraint lines on the map and shows what area is affected. If I now switch to an overload POI scenario, the impacted lines are instantly displayed in red, both visually on the map and also in the table below. In the next view, you'll notice that there aren't any overloaded lines on the map, but watch the graduated X on the right. It tells us that there's a local overload at this transformer location hitting 118%. And finally, last example, the red MESA bus sets the table for more red lines and constraints points, as you can see. With CartoVista's selection tools, I can quickly isolate the transmission line I want to analyze. In this case, I'm selecting the impacted line shown in red. As I make the selection, CartoVista automatically calculates the total line length, in this case, over 108 miles. Being able to see the constraint lines right on the map makes a huge difference. It's a fast, intuitive way to understand how points are connecting and what's happening on the grid. Now, let's explore additional tools and features that can take the analysis even further. CartoVista makes it easy to bring in other geographic data, whether it's from a file or a live web service. This flexibility means you can instantly enrich your transmission corridor analysis, for example, by adding a buffer zone around each POI. In this example, we added the 60-mile buffer, then pulled in useful data like land cover, which is important for renewable energy planning and suitability. CartoVista lets you also interact with its data, zooming in, filtering it, exploring it. And of course, we can add more layers, like in this case, solar potential, to make the analysis even more valuable. CartoVista is purpose-built for spatial data, helping you reduce manual work and accelerate your analysis workflows. Next, we'll show how all of this info can be pulled together in a POI report right inside the CartoVista interface. All of the buffer data we saw earlier, like available capacity by year, suitability, solar potential, can be linked directly to each POI on the map. This makes it incredibly efficient for utilities to generate rich, interactive reports within CartoVista. And since we leverage Power BI for reporting, the setup is fully customizable to align with each utility's unique data and priorities. In real-world projects, utilities and developers often need more than just a few data points. They want to assess multiple criteria at once and compare different POIs side by side. That's where CartoVista's scoring analysis becomes a game changer, helping to evaluate and rank location based on the factors that matters the most. We can create custom scoring analysis to help you prioritize POIs based on multiple user-defined criteria right inside CartoVista. The results are simply displayed and visualized right on the map using a color scale from white to low scores to red for high priority matches. The scoring is entirely data-driven and tailored to the factors that matters most to your team. For example, I can set a rule that the 2029 capacity for my project must be at least 100 megawatt. Add a factor like average, solar potential, give it a positive influence on the score. I can also add negative constraints like critical habitat area, where more protected land reduces the scoring. Each variable's impact is easily adjustable using visual weighting controls, allowing users to experiment with different scenarios and find the best planning balance. What makes this especially valuable for utilities is how flexible and intuitive it is. You can drag and drop your data, set variables, and get immediate insights, all without writing a single line of code. We hope these capabilities have sparked some ideas on how to streamline your planning process and take your analysis beyond what is required by FERC. Now I'll pass it all over to Laura for a quick recap.
Awesome. So we're nearing the end of the webinar here. I just wanted to cover a couple of things that we learned. So we talked about how compliance is the starting line and not the finish line. So we know that it's required to meet FERC requirements. And we also discussed that making a map is very much different than developing an application. We want to make sure that the things that we are bringing into the world are clear and useful. So a good litmus test is asking, can developers test megawatt injection scenarios? Can technical users understand it easily? And are people able to navigate and be able to tell what the information in the data is trying to say? The next point is putting the user first. So again, regardless of if you're building a house or if you are going with an off-the-shelf solution, we want to make sure that we're always putting the user front of mind. We want to make sure that accessibility is considered. We want to make sure that being able to totally use the tool is front and center. We also want to consider building with change in mind and future-proof. And I know that's on everyone's radar with things like AI and everything that's coming up. Rules will evolve. You'll soon, your queue is going to evolve. It's probably going to grow, and your team might also. So looking for something that is flexible, that won't need to be rebuilt next year or the year after that, or anytime requirements shift is pretty important. And one quick example, we worked with an RTO and they decided kind of midway through the project to change their power flow analysis software. And they were looking to meet FERC requirements, but because they were working with something that was flexible, we were able to actually help them adopt, and it did not set the timeline back at all. And so something that's flexible and agile is especially useful because in environments that need to evolve quickly, it's important to meet your deadlines. And next is thinking about scalability. There are some options out there that see heavy traffic and they actually charge per user that are visiting. So you want to make sure that the performance holds up. You want to make sure that there are no limitations when it comes to public access and that there are smooth interactions even with large data sets. And lastly, we were talking about planning and collaboration and how important it is not to work in a vacuum. And that doesn't just go for your own team internally, but if you do choose to work with a vendor, the necessity to have one that is able to work with you as well. And the best results ultimately do come from collaboration, as we learn from things like the JAD sessions, being able to bring everybody from the GIS, IT, and compliance team all together. We want to make sure that everyone is working together. So ultimately, whether you do build in-house or if you're working with an off-the-shelf or kind of a mix, there are three main questions that you must ask. The first is it usable? The application that you're developing, is it usable? Is it scalable? And will it hold up over time? All right. And so now we're going to jump into looking at those questions in a little bit more detail. So the first is it usable? Is it scalable? And will it hold up next year? And let's put those into practice. So the matrix that you're looking at right now pulls together what we've talked about today, and it ultimately will help your team assess what's really needed, whether you're building in-house or using off-the-shelf tools or somewhere in between. So you should broadly consider two main buckets. You can see in purple at the top, we've got user experience on the far left, everything in purple in that category. And then you can see in the bottom in green, the team and analysis section. And the way I like to think about this is in purple, it's more external and green is more internal. But ultimately, these are the capabilities that your application should or could have. And I invite you to take some time to take a look at each of those capabilities in that first column, and that will support kind of having you kind of consider what it is that we're discussing here. So these two buckets that we're talking about, both internal and external, are basically the internal starting point for conversations. It should give you an idea about where to begin with both the functionality as well as the capability. And again, they should answer those questions. You know, which approach gives you flexibility to adapt? Is there clarity to engage non-technical users? The support to move quickly without, cutting corners and things like that. So again, there is no one size fits all, as you know, but there is definitely a right fit for your own organization. And one of the major questions is if you're not really sure where you stand, we'd be happy to help you. So I'd like to invite you. We're offering a free FERC Order 2023 readiness assessment that, again, is whether you build in-house or if you decide to work with a vendor, that's totally fine. It's a 30-minute session, a short working session, where we'll review your current approach, we'll map out gaps and help you figure out where you're ready to move forward or where you might be stuck. And so drop us a message if you'd like to set up the assessment. At the end of the webinar, we will give you the steps of how to get that set up. So we're going to move over now to the final stretch of the webinar. If you haven't already asked some questions in the Q&A section down below, please do now. Now's the time to ask whatever burning questions that you may have, whether it's about the team, the process, the whatever it is, and we'll get to those.
It looks like the chat may not work properly. Are you guys able to send something through the chat? Laura, I think we are missing that capability for some reason. So it looks like we may not get a lot of questions.
No problem. Okay, I think that for the sake of everyone's time in that case, what we can do is that if there are questions, we're going to follow up anyway. It does bring us to the end of the session. So I guess we'll conclude, and I'll give you guys a way to contact us in case there are questions that do come up. We apologize.
Yeah.
It looks like the chat was disabled.
And now it looks like it is enabled now. We can see some question.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, some questions coming in. I can see some question here.
Awesome. Let me have a look.
Yeah. So the question is, with respect to scalability, do you monitor storage usage? Yes, absolutely. We monitor the storage usage of each of the utilities workspace. We also have information about the usage of the platform from anonymous users. So if you are using the platform, if anonymous users use a platform, we have the information on the number of requests that came in. We can provide reporting on the usage of the platform, like wanting to know how many people visited the map last month. This can be done. So I think you guys need to go to the Q&A section to enter questions. So if you guys have questions, we still have a bit of time. You need to go to the Q&A menu in Zoom and start typing in your questions. We have a question coming in. So where is CartoVista data hosted? So we are hosting everything in Amazon Web Services in the US East region. I believe it is somewhere in Virginia. So it is there. Oh, another question. Can CartoVista be deployed on our own premises? Of course, as we outlined in the presentation, it can be deployed on your premises. We've got all the flexibility to deploy it either in hybrid, in your own cloud if you need to, or on your own premises. Another question is, how long does that typically take? And this is a good one. It really depends on each utility, depending on your IT department, whether they are using container or not, and the technique. So lots of information to go by here. We got some good feedback from Anita. Thank you, Anita. It was a great presentation. Will it be available? So maybe you can answer that one, Laura.
Of course, Anita, you're always jumping the gun. We will be providing all that in follow-up, and I'll get to that actually in the final wrap-up. But of course, we always provide the recording as well as any of the presentation and things like that in the following sections.
Great. We have another question. We don't have GIS resources within transmission planning. How long can it take to clean, prepare our data before it goes live? Maybe you want to take that one, Winnock. Why not? You're the data guy.
That's a good question. Well, it can be very, very quick depending on the nature of the data. Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. But I was just there's one of our clients that just sent us a data, and we have to meet tomorrow. So it took me like 2 hours to run it through some custom processes we've created, and I came up with something that is pretty much useful and usable. So we have a lot of capacity. Ari, who's here with us, is a wizard of scripting. So the best thing is to reach out to us with your requirement and needs, and I can assure you we can deal pretty quickly with those.
Great answer. All right, one more question. How does CartoVista support single sign-on? So we can integrate with your enterprise solution tools using Microsoft Azure. We support Active Directory. So if you are using Microsoft Identity Management, Microsoft Entra ID, just a question of setting up the connection to your Azure AD, which usually is in the cloud. And that makes a single sign-on user experience, which is great because at the end of the day, the end user can just click on they're all automatically logging into the application, which is very useful. They don't have to manage another password. Another question, maybe you can take that one, Laura. Is there a trial of the software and what do we get with it?
Ooh, absolutely. Yes, there is a trial of the software, and what you get with it is the ability to have you and your team test it out, take it for a spin. For electric utilities, we have some access to some special features and functionalities that others don't. And so basically, you get access to what it would be like. You can build your maps, you can build them internally, you can use them externally. You also get access to some support from us to how to bring things in and make things useful. You have the ability to render heat maps. You also have the ability to basically have access to some of the POI analysis module things. So what Danny was describing about some of the KV levels and some of the switches, the things that we've shown as an example in the public maps. We do give about a month's trial in this specific instance when it does come to electric utilities, because we can acknowledge that it is a new tool and there's a lot going on. So I think we extend it to a month for electric utilities. And the types of support that you get is quite extensive, actually. We have a really good reputation with support. There are different ways that you can access it. So inside of your trial, there you can just drop something in the chat, just right inside of your hub. You can also reach out to us directly via email. You can call us as well. We're very quick, and we do get back to everybody within 24 hours when it comes to kind of business working day situations.
Yeah, I have to say that unlike Zoom, or chat is enabled in the platform all the time. So
And the other thing to say about chat too is that it's not a bot, it's us. So
yeah.
we're there, we're answering it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's hands-on. You get help immediately.
Another good question from Anita: is it possible to integrate with two separate instances of Intra ID? That's a really good question that I may need to bring to the engineering team. And if it's not possible, of course, we can work to make it happen. So I don't think that can be a showstopper for us. So this is something we can definitely get back to you. Yeah, and another question: the list of reference utilities that CartoVista helps with creating heat maps. Yeah, we can definitely provide you with that. You've seen a lot of these on the slides that we presented today. Namely, Southern Company, Midwest ISO, PNM. We're working right now with ISO New England on their strategy, and we're also in discussion with several others that we can't really mention because, of course, we have an NDA in place, but we are working with quite a few. So,
awesome.
yes.
Well, we're 2 minutes till the end, so I think that I'll call it. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to say this brings us to the end of the session. I want to say thank you so much for joining us, and a huge thank you for those of you who showed up on the attendee side. I know a few names. Hi, Anita. And thank you as well to the panelists. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for all of your contributions and things like that. And just as some next step things, of course, you will receive a copy of the recording from today's presentation slides. You'll also receive a recording of the presentation and the slides as well. And there will be a quick survey by email, so keep an eyeball out for that. We invite you to share feedback for the survey. That will just give us some good idea about content that you want to see for the next webinar that we have coming up. And again, if you'd like to set up a FERC 2023 readiness assessment, that's that 30-minute meeting that we were discussing about agnostic of tools. We'd love to be in touch with you about that. So you can connect with us, and we're going to just drop our emails in the chat right now. And if chat's not enabled, we'll find a way to do that. But we're going to get in touch with you to let you know how to do that, maybe by email if that's not working. And if you are looking to stay in the loop with other electric utilities tackling the same challenges, you can see on the screen there's that QR code. We're inviting you to join the CartoVista Electric Utility Slack community, and it's a great space to be able to share ideas, ask questions, and ultimately be able to stay ahead of the curve. And last but not least, mark your calendars. Our next webinar is on Wednesday, September 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be diving into things like upgrade cost estimates, POI analysis into more detail, and a few advanced capabilities that I know that you can't miss. So if you're interested in that, please add that to your calendar. And finally, thank you so much. We're ending on time, and we'll see you next time.